Ladies and gentlemen, I've got an exciting episode for you today because as you can see by the numbers below, things are starting to really happen for the channel. Numbers are blowing up, and one thing that comes along with that when that starts to happen is you get the offer for a collaborative video with somebody that's a little ahead of the game on you. Francis Murdock is a renowned photographer, videographer, filmmaker. He's paid pretty high dollar to go to some of these lectures around the country. He's done some tours over in Europe. He is just a skill set walking around on legs. I'm telling you, this guy will blow you away. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go to a live stream of him now, and he is going to basically give us one of his lectures, but in short form for the benefit of this medium. So, ladies and gentlemen, I happily invite you to come and check out the live stream of Francis Murdock on my channel.
In a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
Amateurs. Amateurs. All around me, I'm surrounded by amateurs. If you can't get what you want with the camera by itself, then you got to put the camera down. Because you're insulting its magnificence with your clumsy eyes, your butterbrains. All these counterfeit photographers and videographers taking an image, putting it into a machine to get it to turn into something. Looked like nothing to begin with. Crap. They're just pumping out some more saturated, colorful crap. Fake! The shoot does not move forward until I've given my camera what it desires. If it's too bright outside, we reschedule. If it's too dark outside, we reschedule. If the set I arrive to is too colorful or not colorful enough, I make them rebuild the set. When we're on production, if we don't have enough lights to illuminate everything I know needs to be illuminated for this camera, then I cancel the shoot until I can save up some money, go buy some more lights and come back. Because only a complete novice would come back with subpar footage and count on computer tricks to make it look worth a crap. Colorful crap. The charlatans in sheep's clothing and the robbing their clients blind of the authenticity of true cinema capture. Counterfeit. Fake! Big floppy joke. Making compromises left and right. Bending to the will of their clients' product schedules and deadlines. No, sir. That's boss, not the client. If a life of compromises is all that you're after, you might as well just lock yourself away. Throw away the key. Why don't you put Barney on repeat for your cinematic inspiration? Pissant! The client must wait. Tell them that their finished product will be an embarrassment if we choose to film it this time of day. I see directors like Ash von Chamier, for instance, churning out garbage every month. Makes my stomach turn. All around. Ugh. Might have to take a break. Colorful crap! Not only are his images hollow of emotion, I would go as far as to say that they're soulless. Please understand something. A true artist gets it right in the camera. They demonstrate the patience that this requires. I, for instance, still haven't released anything. Conditions haven't been right. It'll happen though. And when it does, you will see, everyone will see, all these amateurs will see reality. You won't even be able to tell the difference So, get it right in camera. That's the lesson, that's the message. Go with it. To say that was kind of a disappointing lecture would be a bit of an understatement. I'm trying to not feel too insulted at the moment, but that is not how I expected his lecture to go. I did not think that that was going to be the content that he was going to be going over. I do have some disputes that I would throw out in that direction, in that bottom line is, if you're not doing any editing to your photos, then you simply aren't seeing how far they can go. And I think I can prove this to you, so let me just give you a quick little snippet of that right now. So here we are over at the editing station, and let me just show you really quick a couple of clips that I pulled up here that look reasonably fine, I guess. And here we go. We got shrimp. All right, this is random shrimp. All right, that looks pretty good. I mean, honestly, that does not look that bad. But there's just always room to improve. Once you get in the editor, you get to have the ability to finesse these controls a little bit. Let's just play around for just a second. Now, these basic controls over here, I'm demonstrating inside of Adobe Premiere. Adobe Premiere is a video editing program. If you're just into photography, you can use something like Adobe Lightroom. Anybody that's used Lightroom is very familiar with these basic slider controls. There's a lot of apps for phones that do the same thing. Even Instagram gives you options on your exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows. These are just the basic things to play around with in getting the best image that you can. And there's just no way to get this dialed in camera every single time you turn on the camera and face it in a direction. You're just gonna miss way too many things if you have to set up the perfect shot every single second that you film. It's impossible. It is not possible. And on top of that, you still couldn't dial in the exact way that you want the highlights and the shadows to behave inside the camera every time. There's just no way. So here's some basic controls, just these sliders. You could learn how to do this literally in like an hour. You could learn how to use enough of Lightroom to import your photos and use these basic slider controls. So here we are. I'm just gonna bump up the contrast some here, all right? Now it's starting to pop a bit more. I'm gonna bring up the highlights a little bit. Generally with food, I find that it's better to get closer to overexposed. Food looks really nice when it's just like, you never wanna have underexposed food. So here we go. I'm gonna bring down the shadows just a little, maybe. And I'm just kind of experimenting with this for the moment. Let's bring the blacks down a little bit. Yep, that pushes it more. And there you go. Let's just check out, well, let me try the exposure just for a second. Let's see here, right about there, just a little bump. Okay, so let's turn off this effect. All the controls that I just did, let's turn it off, and there it was. Now, that didn't look wrong to begin with, but now doesn't it feel wrong? Doesn't it feel like it's not everything it should be? Look at that, that's way more delicious. Let's go on to another shot real quick. Okay, here's Tristan mowing. Now, this was a rare occurrence, and he was mowing. Now, there's my son, and you know, it was the middle of the day. It's the worst time of day to try and film. This is where dynamic range really matters in cameras. I'm not gonna get into all that, but bottom line is, look, we've got blown out highlights and this and that. It's definitely a little bit overexposed. He's going in and out under trees, shadows are changing, so I just set it. You know, you have to choose a setting and go with it. But for this shot, for instance, let's just see if we can get it to look a little bit better. If I bring these highlights back down so it's not quite so blown out back there, that's starting to look a little better. Let's try and bring down the shadows a little bit. There we go. Now we're seeing more, like less of the leaves are being blown out. That's kind of nice. Let's see if we pump the whites back up just a little bit, just to kind of give it different. Very, very little. I mean, we've already got some blown out whites, but I like to have it a little bit exposed hot for this. For some reason, I'm just feeling that vibe a little bit. We can bring the exposure back up just a little bit now that we brought down some other things. We can add some more contrast in. So now we're still getting the worst time of day. We still have some highlights, but it's starting to look a little bit punchier. We could boost up the saturation maybe to like 108. That's kind of nice. And maybe we want it to feel a little bit warmer. Let's bump that up by 5. And now let's just turn this off. There it was. There it is on. Now this also, you know, just to edit, just to begin doing something with the computer, like putting crop bars on, which is what I prefer to do on almost all my projects that I do for clients. And look, if we put the crop bars on, it starts to feel a lot more cinematic, which again is something that you have to do on the computer. I mean, depending on the aspect ratio that you filmed at, you got to get different file sizes to match up. I mean, the computer is an inevitable aspect of trying to get the most out of your image and getting things to go together from different sources. So that looks better. If we turn that off again, there's that, there's that. These are the most basic of adjustments, and it improves it some. One more, check this out. This is kind of cool. This is a spider. That looks pretty good already. Like, that looks pretty neat, I think. But we could, look, let's just do some basic adjustments here. Let's just, it's honestly, it's, you know, you film the best that you can with the lighting that's there. It's a little bit underexposed. You know, this is a live setting. This spider is actually wavering in and out of focus because I'm using a really long lens, and see the spider web is bouncing up and down, so it's very hard to get the focus on it. So in that case, you have to bring your aperture down some, so that way you'll have a larger focal plane. Long story short, I had to put the settings where they were to attempt to pull focus on this happening, and I got some shots in there. But let's just go ahead and bump the exposure back up now that we can, because I went as bright as the lens could offer inside the camera, and now I've got to boost it back up. And that's already starting to look better. That's looking nice. And I'm going to bump up the contrast, and then that brings it darker again, but now we're getting a vibrancy in colors. I could bring up highlights because we had no highlight issue in this. Whoops, sorry. Grab that and drag it over. Now he's starting to really pop off the page, or the page, or the screen, whatever you like to call it. And let's see, we could bump these whites up a little bit more too. That's looking pretty cool. And then maybe we bring the blacks, whoa. Let's see here, bring the blacks back down. Now we have this really extreme contrast thing going on. I didn't even mess around with the colors, and we could try it bluer or yellow. No, I liked it where it was at, so I'm just gonna put that back to 0. Now let's just turn this on and off real quick. Actually, let's mess with saturation. We could get away with a little saturation bump. Yeah, I kind of dig that. So if we turn this off, there it was. Now that didn't look wrong to begin with, but now doesn't it kind of feel wrong when you look at it? I mean, not wrong, but isn't this better? I mean, maybe it's a little rambunctious. I could go down to like 110 and then bring this exposure back down to 1.2. But look, that is better. Off, on. Okay. You can't get all those adjustments like that happening inside the camera. So the computer, if you're not using the computer, what I would say is, and you're just trying to go with JPEG straight out of your camera, if you're just taking photos, or if you are filming and you're not doing any manipulation to your image afterwards with color correction, it's one of two things. Either, you know, you're just too intimidated to take it on. I'm trying to tell you that it's actually not that complicated to do those basic adjustments. Or you might be really stuck up and say, I gotta get it in camera. And there are really people that I meet like that, and I'm just like, you're just being stubborn. There's just no way to do that. And Carol, all you're doing is choosing that your photos aren't gonna be as good as they could be. It's as simple as that. I always try to take the best picture I can, but sometimes you have to put the camera at a certain setting to achieve a result that's gonna be better in post. So you get a better overall exposure value, so things are more evened out. And then you know that that's where you should put it, so that way you can get the maximum range in post-production. And if you don't do that, you're gonna have to lean on one side or the other and live with it, whether it's gonna be overexposed or underexposed. And it just is what it is, because you got it in camera. So I'm sorry, Francis, but I dispute your claim, and you can stick it up your butt. Projects at cheap prices. They're jokes. It's just a big joke. Big floppy joke. Turning in all these finished projects for cheap prices.